welcome once again to yet another episode of the Youth Roundtable here on Civic Space TV with me, your host, Okot Olaa. We have had a rather interesting week, but rather, again, in the negative side of things. We are facing mass inflation currently in our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, in our day-to-day lives, we use different items like fruits, vegetables. We use items like kerosene, cooking oil, and several commodities that basically run our day-to-day home economies. Once these goods suffer an increase in price or inflation, where there's more demand than supply, we then face several issues with our economy, and it has a ripple effect on every single one of us. And that, our discussion shall rotate around that. Why are these prices high? Is it a genuine scarcity in the market? Are people hoarding? Are the youth being productive? Are their bodies charged with controlling this? What is the effect of climate change, and how can we sustainably run a country that is as rich as Uganda, arable as Uganda, in a manner that food prices are always stable and food is always available, which is naturally supposed to be the case and has historically been the case. But before we delve into that discussion, I would like to start with something a little bit more, a little bit different, and that is another interesting issue that happened last week with the filing of two petitions. That is petition number 14 and number 15, that were meant to challenge the anti-gay law, which is now in action following the passing by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Of course, the anti-gay law was passed by Parliament earlier this year, targeting same-sex and other queer relations among our public. Of course, the key factors in the petition include that the time given to scrutinize the bill was not enough for public participation. You recall that the Legal Affairs Committee spent only 6 days out of the 45 recommended. The other challenge is the whole of Chapter 4 of the Constitution, that it breaches so many rights, including fair hearing, privacy, among others. And of course, we see bickery between different groups trying to put their name in history books as the lead petitioners for this petition. But we shall delve more into that with my very capable panel, whom I will now introduce, starting from the gentleman on my immediate left, Mr. Kato Laban, who is a member of the National Youth Council. You're most welcome once again.
Yeah, thank you, Ola, for the moderator. I am happy to be here today, and I'm honored to come for this great discussion.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Kato, I must say. And we always enjoy your facts when you're here. I hope you furnish some today. Okay. Yes, we have a new face as well, Mr. Jeff Waako, who is a law student, but most importantly, a leader at Generation Plus. You're most welcome. You can greet our viewers.
Yes, greetings, viewers. I am so delighted, Mr. Okot, to be here. I am ready to discuss, especially in the interest of Ugandans and those that are downtrodden. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. And of course, the evergreen, ever ready, ever present. I don't want to use the word omni. But Honorable Moses Kidega, who is the Secretary for Labor Affairs at the National Youth Council, you're most welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam. It's always a pleasure to be invited on the Youth Roundtable, and this time round to share space with my senior comrade, Ndugu Laban Kato, and my new brother who I'm just meeting today. So I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to a very fruitful conversation. Yes. I mean, amazing topics right there.
Yes, and starting straight with you, of course, you're a lawyer yourself, and we have this bill in the play. I mean, this act that has been rolled out, and we have two petitions. I mean, several groups actually were trying to petition, but I see now many are trying to convene. Honorable Kidega, Charles Onyango and Andrew Menda, the famous case, where the law contravenes human rights, it is struck off.
Mm.
In that same vein, do you think the anti-gay bill is unconstitutional, or and even if it were, do you think there are high chances of it being struck off, given these precedents, not just that, but several precedents where the constitutional, especially Chapter 4,
Yeah.
has trounced over several bills and several decisions?
Thank you. You see, Sam, the law is made to cure a mischief.
Mm.
So the question that we should ask ourselves is that when the anti-homosexuality bill was being passed, that was later on enacted into law and signed by the president, what was the mischief it was intending to cure? But also, if you answer that question, then we should go back to the preamble of our constitution. That I will just pick out 3 statements that we, the people of Uganda, do hereby give ourselves this constitution. That indicates to you that the law is meant to speak to the will and interest of the people, because the law doesn't operate for people in mass. It operates for people who enact them for themselves.
Yes.
So that indicates to you that the law should speak to the ever-changing needs of society, but also it should speak to the reality and aspirations of the people for which it is made for. So if you look at this particular law, the process through which it was enacted and passed into law, I think it had popular support from Ugandans. Because who is the law being made for? It is being made for Ugandans. So in your observation, where Ugandans, besides the lawyers who are now coming up to challenge the procedure through which it was passed, because I see they raise both procedure and substantive issues.
Issues, yes.
But besides those who have taken interest to deep into the legal procedure and the substantive issues therein, I think majority of Ugandans say that we agree with this law. But also you mentioned the Charles Onyango case,
yes.
And that was Justice Mulenga.
Yes.
All right. And in the words of Justice Mulenga, if I'm to just borrow 2 words, in his obiter dictum, he said that even when people have a right, this right should not be taken out of proportion. Because if it does, then we could find ourselves in a state of anarchy. That if you exercise your rights arbitrarily, and the state does not come to curtail the means through which you exercise your rights, then you could impinge, or you could find yourselves in a state of anarchy. I think he was trying to say that the state has a responsibility to say that, for example, we all have a right to life, but you don't have a right to take away your life.
True.
The state has the obligation to stop you from taking away your life.
Yes.
All right. So that indicates to you that the state has an overarching responsibility to, first of all, protect your right as a citizen, but also allow you to enjoy your rights to the extent that you don't infringe on the rights of others. So I think to that extent, Justice Mulenga was very clear. But also, the issue of the anti-homosexuality bill, we shouldn't simplify the argument. It is a geopolitical question. It's a question of power balance. All right? Because you'd ask yourself, why is the West so interested to the extent that they've even halted the World Bank funding? They have gone to that extent to demonstrate to us how much they want us to...
Well, the West claims that it's, of course, a human rights motive behind their actions, that there are people who should not be arrested simply because of who they are. So that is basically the argument from the West. Yeah,
but you see, are the West the supervisors of human rights? Are they the headmasters of human rights? Who are they to tell us that now these are human rights, these are not? Who are they? So I think we also need to debunk that kind of hegemony thinking that the West wants to carry itself in. They are not the supervisors, neither are they the headmasters of human rights. Human rights must be able to be construed in relation to a given society and in conjunction with a given group of people. That is why you see the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas countries ratified it, it is not a treaty that is binding on member states. All right? That is why you see countries like China, up to date, have not ratified. All right? So I think that the West should not portray itself like a global headmaster. Different societies should be able to have the latitude to define what works for them, what doesn't work for them. We cannot import each and everything that the West tells us is right and import it directly into our country and into our culture. So conclusively, I think the petition in itself, whether because I think at this point it is sub judice, because anything before the courts of law, we are told to be reluctant in our legal opinions. But I think that if I'm to give a general comment, is that I think it will take the toll that the 2009 Oloko Onyango petition took, whereby the Constitutional Court and later on Supreme Court confirmed the decision that the procedure through which it was passed lacked quorum, and therefore it was procedurally improper and could not stand on its feet. But also the politics of the bill tells us that President Museveni understands the power balance. He knows that even when he will speak tough to Ugandans and tell us we must preserve our culture and etc., he also knows that 60% of our budget is bankrolled by the West. So he understands the need to strike that balance between the interests of our Ugandans and their conservative culture and values, but also the need for Western support in terms of finances. So I think that is where we find ourselves in a delicate balance.
Thank you very much, Comrade Moses. I'd like to bring that, forward that to you, my brother Jeff. He talks of several aspects, but I want you to address the issue around, can a debt-financed, he speaks of Western hegemony and agenda setting within our context, but can a country like Uganda, which employs a debt-financed model to its budget, have the power to actually stand on its what it presumes to be its moral,
You see, Sam, I will begin this way. First and foremost, a country grows in threefold. The first one, the country grows politically.
Yes.
The country grows economically, and the country grows socially.
Yes.
These three aspects are very fundamental in the growth of the country. Politics-wise, we have grown and we have inherited our politics from countries that came before us, countries that came and colonized us. And always economic growth can happen anywhere, given the fact that this country has good governance. Secondly, this country has resources that are well exploited in the interest of the common citizenry. Then politically, a country can also grow. We have seen countries grow politically at rapid speed. Socially, I'm afraid, countries take long to grow socially. We are seeing countries that have, if you go to the Middle East, we have seen countries that have gotten both economic and reasonable political growth, in as much as they're not classical democracies, but they have reasonable economic growth, but they are still wanting socially.
But who defines the socially? Actually, it's what Moses was saying. What's
that's what I'm coming to. That's what I'm coming to. Any society should be mindful of all its citizenry, all people that occupy that space. I'll respectfully differ from my brother Kidega when he said that the majority of Ugandans chose this law. Are mindful of the principle that vox populi vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God, but we also need to put in consideration the minority groups. And I'm not directly supporting these people, but we need to understand, analyze the jurisprudence surrounding and the socioeconomic framework that surrounds having people that are minor. Otherwise, if we have the mindset and the understanding that people who hold a certain understanding, as long as they're in the majority, they hold the right standing, and therefore the people who are minor to that extent should be completely excluded, then there is a problem. I'm going to issue number 2, Mr. Sam.
Not just excluded, but detained.
Complete.
Detained.
Actually, these people are deprived of the right of existence. However, I'm also mindful that
Proceed.
That's a misrepresentation, Council.
no, you have your time to make a rebuttal. What we are talking about is socially, a country takes long to grow. That's why I'm mindful of that fact in Uganda. Uganda is a country that is African-based, so it will take long to grow. But also, before we can look further, what is the reasoning behind the promulgation or enactment of this law? Number one, people who defend this law and bill and this act had 2 bases. The first one, they had the basis of religion. The second one, they had the basis of culture. Now, honestly speaking, Mr. Sam,
yes,
these 2 bases are completely unfounded. Number one, religion-wise, I had a parliamentarian, a member of parliament from a certain constituency, and she was saying that God is completely against homosexuality. And they are right. They are right, is against. But if we are to assess the intention of this law, we also have to examine what has the government, what have these legislators, what have these MPs done about other laws, other things that are rejected by that are completely condemned by the Bible or by religion. We have a lot of human rights. We have a lot of issues that are dear and are next to the hearts of Ugandans that have been completely ignored. Death, like political death. We have people that have been held incommunicado and arbitrarily arrested. These people are completely desperate. They're in prisons, wallowing there, and nobody's talking about it. Now, if you're examining the Bible to use it as a point of basis, you should also apply it evenly, not just about the aspect of homosexuality, because the Bible is against
So
murder.
you think those are more urgent than even homosexuality?
Yes, they're more urgent. Then number 2, we have the issue of culture. Some we are here, you're putting on a suit, he's putting on a suit, I'm putting on this, whatever we are having as a people is an inherited culture. Unless African leaders want to come out and say that we have to completely get rid of these people's culture and maintain our classical culture, you understand? I think it's also an unfounded position. We have got a lot of things that we are accommodating, even women in our cultures.
But
we are
this
kept in the
this
kitchen.
is cotton. Cotton is
No, I'm meaning the style of
grown
dress.
here.
Were you tucking in? Were your grandfathers tucking in? They were not
No,
tucking in.
but that is evolution of society.
You may call it
Which is
evolution.
normal.
You may call it evolution, but
Which is normal. Should we be naked
No, Kidega, you are not
like our grandparents were?
Your grandparents were not naked before.
Some were naked.
Some were naked, but you had your traditional wears. You understand?
Yes.
Whatever you're putting on right now, this style,
Evolution.
it is inherited. Evolution basing on what you copy from the West. So if that's what you're calling evolution, then you're right to that extent. You could as well get your back cloth, modify it, and make it evolution. Why have you adopted this type of dressing? Kidega. That is the fact. But I would also want to speak in the interest of Ugandans. Mindful of the fact that Ugandans out there are being manipulated and exploited. First and foremost, we all know that you can hardly find a member of parliament, a politician in Uganda, especially those coming from the incumbent government, who are having, I would say, good faith. You understand? Who are having good faith, bona fide conviction towards making Uganda a model country, especially socially. You understand? Most of these things we are having, the promulgation of this law and so forth and so what, I believe, like he has said, the last bill, the last act that was promulgated in 2013, enacted in 2013, was quashed by the Constitutional Court. Procedurally, you understand? And we have not, as Ugandans, sat down to examine what is the fundamental, you understand? What are the fundamental issues surrounding this idea? That's why, even after this one, the other one of 2013 was quashed, we had the same issues rising in Parliament.
Yes.
Because procedurally, it was about the voice vote, number one. People are voting by the hand. And under the
Rules of procedure.
Yeah, rules of procedure of Parliament, you must vote by the voice about such sensitive matters. But also we had the absence of the speaker or the non-intervention of the speaker. Then we had the quorum issue. These are just procedure matters. This issue must be discussed administratively. Trust me, Uganda is growing. And if we do not grow, we are going to keep on going through a vicious cycle, discussing. As I conclude, I'm going to your question now. Asking whether a country like Uganda can survive. Surviving of Uganda, you people, sometimes you trivialize discussions. Kidega. You understand as well as understand that our country is being economically mismanaged. Doesn't matter whether you get aid from abroad. Doesn't matter whether we are having a lot of World Bank has cut off funding. We have got countries that are sustained without a foreign fund. You understand? The issue is about coming and correcting domestic matters. Otherwise, as long as you are speaking about hegemony, we cannot completely break off international hegemony, especially people who believe we cannot do without them unless we have solved issues back at home. That's what I believe. And we as a country, we can revitalize our economy by organizing and ensuring the functionality of institutions. That's the only thing that matters. Otherwise, we shall have these discussions. These people have denied us aid. These ones have denied. Okay, what has aid done? It has done nothing. The only thing it does, it just adds a lot of cars on the motorcades of the ministers, beautifies homes of these ministers, but it does not go to the common person. The person I'm speaking for, the downtrodden, from where I come from. You understand? These are the people that should have the meaning side of this entire discussion. Yeah, and I think that's my submission.
All right, thank you very much. We had the in-depth discussion on sovereignty. I think at the time when the bill was passed, and I noticed that at the time the president passed the bill into an act, all the spaces that we had, people were actually not interested in the bill as much as they were interested in the fact that can we hold our decisions, and that was interesting. I would like you to pick up from where he stated. There's a part where he talked about both of them actually talked about the 2014 petition, which was Oloko Nyango. There's a lot of fight about who will the case be named after, but Oloka won that one. So the case of Oloko Nyango and others.
This one will go to Fox Odoi.
Oloko Nyango and others, 2014, but it was struck procedurally, on the way it was run. So isn't it a good chance now that we have this in court, that we settle this once and all? If it breaches human rights, it is so for good. Let the case be discussed substantially in court and put back out there. If court overrules, in law we call them shelf laws. It is put in the bookshelf and kept there it is. Don't you think this is a good opportunity for Ugandans to deal with this matter once and for all?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Well, whenever I try to discuss any topic, I first base on the history.
Yes, please.
In order to have reach conclusion. Of course, as you said, the petition of 2014, we have to recall that in 2009, the Ndorwa East MP, now the Minister for Trade, I think, Honorable Bahati, is first tabled the bill on floor of Parliament. Then we saw in, I think, December 20th of 2013, the Parliament passing the law, and then the President fulfilling his constitutional mandate of Article 91(8), asserting to the law in 2014. But then we saw also in the same year the petitioners, including the former Waako of the State House, Honorable Fox Odoi from Tororo, and then the lecturer at Makerere University School of Law and the rest, challenging the law, the law which was asserted by the president. And the major issue that the Constitutional Court based on to nullify was the issue of the quorum.
Yes.
That was, by the way, the most issue that the best, the Constitutional Court came in to come up with the remedy. It was about the quorum. That the Speaker allowed the proceedings of the Parliament to go on, even when the 2/3 of the legislators were not present, as required by the law.
Yes.
Which was contravening the constitution of the Republic of Uganda. The president went ahead and asserted the law. I am very sure
That's what
President Museveni Tibuhaburwa, who has led this country for more than 36 years, maybe he didn't know. Let's assume he didn't know about anything. We say he asserted and looked through the law and he said maybe the proceedings
were okay,
or the procedures of the Parliament were okay. Let me assert it to this law, and every citizen of Uganda is abided
the
by
president
it.
has legal advisors.
Yes, but I had to force,
including
he looked through those advisors like Catherine Luxasila maybe, and the Butcherman and the rest. And he said, you know what? You know?
He called them around.
And even this former lawyer who is now challenging, maybe look to the
who challenged that one.
You know, I am considering maybe Catherine Luxasila. This is okay. Then we saw the same lawyer, his former personal lawyer of President Museveni, going to the court, to the constitutional challenge and the colleagues.
But we also have to assume that he genuinely wants to fight for gay rights.
Who?
Honorable folks.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, in economics, there is what we call, most of you are lawyers. That's why I'm very, very careful when I'm talking about the issues concerning the law. Because I don't know much. But it's better to always also tap into the economics part.
Sure.
In economics, there is what we call public choice theory. If you read through, and I am very sure, the president of a certain country in East Africa is basing on, who has stayed in the power for some time, is basing, or is maybe implementing, or looking at different assumptions laid in the public choice theory. I leave with that discussion there. Then this year, we saw the Speaker and the Parliament. You remember, Honorable Basalirwa also brought back the bill. And when the Parliament sat in that session, I was very active when they were passing the bill. I looked at the members of Parliament, some members of Parliament. I got worried. One, that you have a Parliament that goes on with a lot of excitement without looking into the constitutions, all articles of the constitution, but they just focus.
Do you think that was politically motivated? Of course, the assumption for many is that they are representing their people, and the people will see them.
You see, well, even when you represent the people, it is the duty of the members of Parliament to respect the laws that they put into enactment. It is their duty to make sure that, because they are the one who make those laws. So it is whether the interest of the people are on this side, but what does the Constitution say? Because you cannot be a member of Parliament, you say, you know what, this is what my members of the constituents are saying, even when you know that the Constitution says otherwise. So what is your role as a member of parliament? One is to guide the citizen. That's why they send you. They don't send S4 dropout.
What if they ask for murder? Allow us in our constituency to murder. And it's in contravention of the constitution.
Then you have to, it is the role of the.
I'm in support of your point.
That is it. That here you had a speaker in 2013, 2014, who was presiding over parliament. You are allowed to go against the constitution, and you pass them. So even this time around, I saw members of parliament when folks are doing
was presenting,
tried to present the minority report. So many people were not attentive. One, second, so many members of parliament were jubilating without listening to the content the man was presenting. I am not here to say that I'm supporting the queers. No. But I am here to talk about, do people listen to each other, even when I know that this one may be wrong. Because you see, you don't just jubilate basing on the perception of your voters without considering what is in the constitution.
Yeah, I want to take that point to.
I get it. I'm still maybe the
conclude.
So I saw the Attorney General Council coming honorable coming up to guide the House, saying that, you know what, this time around it's not about the quorum, but
substance.
It's about substance. Remember in 2014, remember even there was when you talk about, there was even they had introduced a death penalty for those practices, mostly for aggravated homosexuality. But then due to the international pressure that was started, you saw it reducing to 14 years. But we saw that this law, it introduced things that contain, for example, promotion. So many things are there. Even the aggravated homosexuality also is talked about. But as I conclude, now, this time around, the petitioners, mostly, they are looking at, mostly their focus, it is the procedures of the parliament.
Yes.
And also, the Article 90 of the Constitution, which says that the parliament shall not pass the law which alters the prior judgment of the court.
And there are 4 judgments being fronted.
That means that if, for you lawyers, I think, do we call that when there is a case law to follow?
Precedent.
Yeah, precedent, the law precedent. That if there is a law, if there is a case that
court has taken a decision.
Yes,
on, more
a
so
decision,
at the
and the remedy were on the remedies were on the side of the petitioner, then the parliament shall not pass the law in the same manner. The Attorney General
guided.
But as I said, at the end of the day, I am very sure the president of a certain country in East Africa is going to use the public theory, choice theory. And at the end, you will see the outcome. I didn't want to.
What do you think is the outcome?
I have said the public choice theory.
But we have had, I'm speaking from a lawyer perspective, we have had similar issues that are where different people came up with to challenge certain acts that were promulgated or enacted by the parliament.
Yes.
To the effect that they were questioning the human rights perspective thereof.
Yes.
Most of these acts that were promulgated, for example, the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2004, brought by Mwanga Chivumbi, most of them, if you read all of them, they have, I would say, a signature decision given by the honorable judges.
That upholds the chapter 4.
Yeah, it upholds. However, they don't strike down sometimes.
No.
Or if they strike them down, they strike them down over procedure.
Yes.
And they say, if it's not procedure, then they also give consideration to human rights. They say this act or this law should be upheld in consonance with chapter 4 of the Constitution. So I think what will happen to this particular petition is that they will still strike it down over procedure. I don't think there shall be any discussion about substance, because the political actors thereof still want to maintain that issue of substance. They want to leave Ugandans hanging, both the one who is in government and
for another round.
Actually, for the first time ever.
For the next parliament.
By the way, let me tell you, there's something I'd forgotten. You have to look at the history of this Muslim. Look, it was tabled in Parliament in 2009. But you remember in 2016, we had an election. Then, court nullified it in 2014. But it was passed in 2013. Today we have elections in 2016. Then I am very sure it is going to be the remedy. The people will get the remedy next year, because yesterday it was deferred.
So you think there's political determinism somewhere?
You see, I talked about the public choice theory, and I also talked about the geopolitics. So it is about, I can tell you, the remedy will come next year.
Comrade Moses,
yes.
Your first submission was around, what we hold moral as Africans and issues like that. But as the discussion has matured along the way, it seems to be there's a lot of an interesting legal dynamic around this law. From what they say, and also from what I pick, it appears that this law is built to fail. It is built to not to last. It is just built to give us another cycle, of chance and counseling, and then the court strikes down. Because for sure, on procedure, of course, 91 says if a court has passed and has a judgment on a particular issue, it's one of the issues around balance of power. So
checks and balances.
It should not, checks and balances. It should not pass a law that contravenes. In this case, they're fronting over 4 judgments. Now, on the substance, of course, if it reaches the substance, I think you'll agree with me that historically the courts have always upheld substance. So do you think this is just some type of legislative show or legislative circus that, and our brother predicts that it will be struck down on procedure, so that there's another round of
so that they leave Ugandans hanging.
There's another round of this whole game in future. Yeah. So what do you have to say about that?
Sam, if I'm to go by your initial assertion to say that this is
I
just
was asking a question.
Oh yeah, a question, yes. But
moderator cannot make assertion.
if I'm to go with your earlier statement,
yes,
that of course came in form of a question, which is
Makerere Law School teaches us to ask questions from
question examination. But Sam, if I'm to go with your initial question, which is this just another decoy to take us through a legal cycle? If that were the case, then it's very unfortunate, because this is taxpayers' money that is injected into this process, that each time we find ourselves undergoing through such a very tedious legal process, there is taxpayers' money being incurred in this. So I think if that is the motive, which I highly don't think is the case, then it would be very unfortunate. But also, why I don't think it is the case is that because the Supreme Court has dealt with the issue of procedure, not with the substantive matter, not with the issues arising. Court did not go ahead to address its mind on the issues being raised in the petitions.
Yes.
It only said your procedure of parliament says ABCD, you did not follow it, go back. When you follow that procedure, then you can come back and we can hear you. So there is no precedent, there is no locus classicus on the issue of the substantive matter
but there's
that
a
are
locus
being raised
classicus on human rights.
Yeah.
On human rights issues. Then we have discussed them, including Obo Oloko Nyango.
No, but Sam, you know, as I do, that human rights is not an abstract idea.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Here
Courts of law have dealt with particular rights, like the Charles Onyango Bo dealt with the issue of freedom of speech.
Yes.
All right. So different cases have dealt with different things. The Mwanga Chivumbi case dealt with freedom of association. All right. So we cannot say that the Supreme Court has dealt with human rights. No, it has dealt with provisions under Chapter 4. Specific provisions that have been challenged by individuals in the courts of law. So I cannot say that the Supreme Court or court has pronounced itself on human rights in general. Yeah, but you see, Sam, just to mention one thing before I forget is that, you know, a law, if it's being made, it must be efficacious. It must be able to be enforced.
Exactly.
Now, this particular law, I don't know how the state had planned to enforce it.
Let me give you context, Moses. You've been to Moscow.
Yes,
before. Russia has the same issue. It's a traditional society, but living in the wake of protracted Western influence, like what we watch, the entertainers. Even Putin said, I'm a fan of Elton John, who is a gay person. So after scientifically studying their society, they did not roll out an anti-gay or anti-homosexuality act. They rolled out protection of the traditional Russian family act. So for them, they don't arrest you for being gay. It's unenforceable, we know. But they arrest anyone in promotion, on TV and all that kind of stuff. So actually the law has been working. And that is a case of like a law which, actually in preparation for this, I was saying, which laws against homosexuality or against this culture have been feasible? Now, when you come here, that's why the concern was that if this law is put against Chapter 4, will it stand? And is the problem in the drafting?
And again, Sam, Chapter 4 has, I don't know how many provisions, but there are over 30 provisions in Chapter 4. Actually, close to 40 provisions in Chapter 4. So there are quite a number. So this particular petition, should we evaluate it against each and every of those provisions, or should we take it in an omnibus manner? I think that to say that if you put this law against Chapter 4, it will fall down, I think that could not be the case. But if you put this law against certain provisions under Chapter 4, it could fall down. But also, I ask myself, because we have Section 145 of the Penal Code Act that speaks of unnatural offenses, that criminalizes unnatural offenses. So I don't know why, for all this while, we haven't challenged Section 145 of the Penal Code Act, but then we are challenging this particular law. So you can see that the motive at times of those who are petitioning could be in question, because I don't think that these lawyers, with their experience, with their with all the experience that below their belt, they have not come across Section 145.
Yes.
So that also tells us about the motive and their inspiration towards trying to orchestrate this petition. But as I conclude, you asked me a question around, if you could remind me.
No, I was asking, is there an issue with the drafting of the law? Because it's, and you tried to answer already, around feasibility.
Yeah, actually, yes. I was mentioning about the enforcement of this law. Because I think what the law is talking about is that, because you'd ask yourself, how would the police have to breach your privacy for them to have to know that there is a man and a man who are having a sexual affair?
And then there's also the whole issue around presumption of innocence, which is you're not guilty until
proven.
So if someone storms your house, so there are all those issues.
True.
Technical.
But also, like I said, enforcing this law would be an uphill task. That is why you see the law in its text, it has been very careful to say that those who are promoting it. That is why I said earlier on that what council was saying was a misrepresentation to the public. That the law chooses to either criminate or to subjugate or to... No. The law is saying that those who are promoting, those who are trying to even have minors involved in this act.
Yes, now aggravated.
Are the ones that the law is trying to criminalize. Yes, but the law is not saying that we shall come to your house and abuse your right to privacy for us to investigate on this matter. The law is saying those who are promoting, those who come out publicly to try and influence others, are the ones who... I mean, if you want to be gay in peace. All right? Do it, because if it's about...
So you think the Russian model would...
If it's about your personal pleasure, that for you enjoy sleeping with a fellow man or a fellow woman, do it in privacy. But why should you come to the public and you're trying to coerce young people, you're trying to influence others to...
But also it is against the practice.
To do what you're...
Yeah.
I would like to ask the good counsel as well. Mr. Kidega, you are speaking about the issue of just punishing the people who promote, and you're speaking about aggravated homosexuality. This entire bill is speaking about homosexuality. Actually, what you're highlighting is just a part of it. If a promoter is punished, what about that which is being promoted? Then number two, if people who are engaging in straight sex, you understand, are given liberty to express their love, even on the streets, you hold each other's waist, you do what? Then to only be fair, if you are a student of human rights, to grant the other party too. If at all you are claiming that they are not criminalizing them, they are telling them you enjoy, but as far as the expressing is concerned, anyway, what is promoting?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Just in a second. You see, my friend Waako here is forgetting to address his mind to the fact that society is made up of people. All right? And that there is something called standards. There's something called a norm that we all agree that this is... Because I don't think that every Ugandan participated in the making of the 1995 Constitution.
No.
But here we are, and we are abiding by it. All right? So, because the idea is that at the time, majority of Ugandans participated and adopted this law. So, the point is that, Mr. Waako, there is a standard that we have taken and accepted as a society. That in the Ugandan society, this works for us, this does not work for us. So if you belong to the minority group, your rights should not be abused, I agree. But at the same time, the majority should have their way. Yeah? The majority should have their way.
I want to come to you, Honorable Jeff. We had a question here about the motive of the petitioners. We have several groups. In fact, first of all, when the act was passed into law, in fact, when the bill was passed, we started seeing a lot of funded papers. Everyone was writing a research, a paper. That's one. Two, many people have left the country. Last time we saw a policeman now in Canada with dreadlocks. Many people have left the country on...
I have my friend called Nabuyanda.
Nabuyanda also left.
Yes, he was one of the people who was advocating for the rights of the queers.
People have left Uganda. Three, we have so many groups that wanted to petition. We are seeing politics of the petitioners, issues around... now we see convening for equality. We see folks, Odoe, Andrew Mwenda is on both petitions. There are so many, there's a lot of bikery. And Honorable Kidega rightfully says, these people have ignored things like offenses against unnatural acts. They have also ignored issues, like you said, Supra, that there were there are other grave criminalities happening in Uganda. So do you think fighting for gay rights has become more of an industry?
It's quite unfortunate and disheartening that Ugandans have been placed on a board. I'll call it a chessboard.
Yes.
And they are being played like pawns. You understand? These issues affect the socio-economic well-being of these Ugandans. And I do not want to conclusively say that the actors and those who are coming out to petition have rather selfish motives. But I would like also to say that this entire subject of homosexuality and their rights is rather politicized everywhere, especially in Uganda here. Because if the matter is about what Ugandans want and what they desire and what they wish to have, I would still think that in the interest of the majority of Ugandans, they can still maintain it. However, if we are still unless they can still maintain it as long as they have addressed the issues of substance. Substance is what matters. Substance is coming down.
But there's also a political, tactical, strategic ambiguity.
That's why I'm saying it's quite unfortunate. You understand? That's why I'm saying it's quite unfortunate that Ugandans are being played like pawns. You understand? If we address the issue of substance and explain to Ugandans and bring the stakeholders on board, you understand? This is understandable. But as long as we are going to have cases of striking down acts of this manner, using issues of procedure.
But don't you think there's also the complication that this is a social matter and it socially evolves. Society is always evolving. The young people, by the way, are very tolerant of, at least in terms of, because of the movies and everything. So don't you think maybe we are just avoiding a conversation that doesn't end? Maybe there's no answer to this matter substantially, apart from the fact that it breaches human rights, which is also not in the interest of
the majority of Ugandans.
So, maybe we're avoiding
that's what I'm talking about. We have avoided the issue of substance. As long as you not address the substance of the law, procedures shall be the ramifications. They shall be the direct consequences. You will discuss procedure, but you will never come to terms with the substance. The question is, are there homosexuals in Uganda?
Yes.
If the answer is yes, how did they become homosexuals? Sometime back, the president of the Republic of Uganda, I would like to say it's not just about disconnection from the reality, but he was saying that he would have given a leeway for the homosexuals had it been something attached to biological, scientific something. You understand? If it is you are made like that, fundamentally, scientifically, then it's okay. But like what to say, we need to have a serious discussion about these issues. Why? Because if the matter is not, some claim these homosexuals are sponsored. But I would like to let me ask Mr. Kidega, because he has now become my good friend. Mr. Kidega, you're not a homosexual.
Yes, I'm straight.
You are straight.
Very straight.
How much money can you be given to become a homosexual?
Well, people have different beliefs and values, right? Me personally, there is no amount of money that I can take to make me become a homosexuality. But there are people whose value system is not as strong as my own, and they can be waved either to the left or to the right. But also, Council, you mentioned something that I would love to make a comment on. That are these homosexuals born like that? I want to say that if there is scientific proof that the people who are born with a hormonal imbalance, then why can't we also take interest in finding a medical solution for them? That if you are born with hormonal imbalance, which hormones are outweighing the other, can we derive for you a medical solution to realign your hormones? But not to say that you are going to fundamentally abuse nature and undermine the principles of procreation. I think we can find a medical solution for them.
Yes.
But saying that because you are born in this way, so now we should allow you. I think we have a duty to these people to help them and to rehabilitate them back to society and give them medical support.
Yeah, you're right. You're right to that extent. And I'm only trying to, what I'm trying to bring forth.
Conclusion. I want to bring in Comrade Laban.
What I want to bring forth is, I do not know why you believe for you as a person, you cannot take any money in exchange for to change your like to go into homosexuality, but you believe that some other people who are not grounded value-wise can go in for it. I personally do not. In as much as they can give you money, you cannot change your nature. You understand? You may pretend for a while, but you cannot change your nature. After a while, you will look at your fellow men, you'll be like, let me go for this woman. You understand? So if the issue is about, we need to examine what is the source of homosexuality. Number one, how can a person who has been straight turn into homosexuality? That's the substance I'm talking about. As he has well said, if the matter is about scientific issues, natural issues, biological issues, how can we correct this issue? That is what matters today. Otherwise, we are going to have these discussions, homosexuality, substance, or procedure, substance, until maybe Jesus Christ will come back and say, this is the right thing to do, or this is where to go. But you need to deep into these issues.
Thank you very much, Comrade Jeff. Comrade Laban, I'll give you a chance to reply. You're the last speaker on this topic. But then you're also our historian, as you stated earlier. There's been a discussion around whether this is African culture. Comrade Kidega brought it up. Of course, it has been ongoing around. But many scholars, especially people like Sylvia Kamale, speak of the importation of this anti-gay sentiment actually coming from what? Judeo-Western religion. That is the missionary times, including several things, not just homosexuality. These things of saying Africans dress decently. You know how our people used to dress. We had ways of handling homosexuals. Paradox. That's the paradox, because we had ways of handling homosexuals. Some societies embraced them. Some societies put them at the corner of the village. They had their ways of managing. But I don't think death was one of them, given African principle of Ubuntu. And according to her thesis, she says there was a colonial mentality that brought about this. And then, of course, the whites themselves left religion. So now we are the ones holding on to their vomit. So is this really an African, on this issue of culture, is this really an African complex that we should kill? Because their bill said you should kill.
No, I disagree with the killing person if it is African culture and religious one.
Even to imprison for 10 years.
No, but that one it can be. It depends on the laws that govern a given state. It depends. But whether to the NLO, I don't agree with the killing someone who practices. But you see, we have to examine. Homosexuality has not just started today.
Yes.
It has been there. Even, by the way, let me tell you, in those Western countries we talk about, there are states, for example, in America, where gotten promoting homosexual or something, you are in prison. Did you know that? In America.
The Bible Belt.
I am telling you. So we shall come here. Let me tell you. I'll come here, discuss the procedures here in Uganda, how it is fought. I can tell you whether there is a law or not. Homosexuality in Uganda will exist until we leave this world. I did a comprehensive analysis on such. And considering the way I've said, I did a comprehensive analysis. I looked at the public choice theory and the geopolitics is talking about. I can tell you as conclude. In Uganda, such laws that have an impact on Uganda's foreign policy. Whether we discuss
agree or
here,
disagree,
or what. At the end of the day, the big man of the heart, as long as he says this, it will not.
Sam,
you have a valid point.
With your permission,
yes, please.
I want to ask. Yes, I want to ask him a question. Laban, we have had people of rogue character in society from time immemorial. People who say steal, like thieves. But does it mean that because we have had them before, therefore we should not penalize them? We should not convict those who steal?
No, you convict, but not
Laban, allow me bring a counter question. all those things you're going to note, it is a deprivation. You go still to benefit. What do homosexuals benefit?
Okay, let's
So that's the question.
It is a matter of public interest.
But do you
No.
I'll protect Comrade Laban.
It is a matter of public interest.
Yes, but what
This
I
is public interest litigation.
That's why we are asking ourselves a question.
Mr. Dombo, has to be protected. What I
let's
am saying is, one, after doing my analysis and the geopolitics surrounding this, and looking at the 2026 interest, and this state headed by President Museveni, Tibuhaburwa, when he looks at Uganda as a foreign policy, and we are nearing 2026, I can assure whether we come here and we discuss the procedures of Parliament in regards to the passing of this bill, as long as he wants, everything will be done. Whether to pass, the court to nullify, to reject the petition, or to nullify the decision of the Parliament. As long as whether we discuss it, because what do you think that you have a one Andrew Mwenda and a former personal lawyer of the President Museveni, they are among the people challenging. What do you think in your head? As long such you see a Anti-Homosexuality Act, it's not just a mere law. We should agree that it has an impact on Uganda's foreign policy. So you think Museveni can just look? At the end of the day, the final word will come from him. This is what, and we shall be saying.
That is a typical misrepresentation.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I expected that from you, but we should agree that at the end of the day, such a law.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
will be from you.
It has been an interesting discussion.
Because we lack system.
We are going for a brief break.
Governance. What do you expect to do?
We are going for a brief break, and we shall be back in a snap. And of course, we shall be elevating the discussion to issues around the commodities that affect you and me on a day-to-day basis. So stick with us here on the Youth Roundtable.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Yes, thank you very much, our dear viewers, for sticking with us. We are back for the second segment here on Civic Space TV, where we have this show, the Youth Roundtable, to delve into issues that affect our collective ambition for Uganda that works for all of us. Of course, from the youth angle or from the youth lens. In the first segment, of course, we ran through the Anti-Homosexuality Act and then the petitions that came in as a consequence of that. It's going to be a continuing discussion. At that, we shall leave it for you to make your mind. Opinions, able and persuasive opinions came from all the three capable panelists. But for now, we want to move swiftly into the issue of inflation. Of course, as you know, right now we have serious inflation. Something like an onion, which we all use in our houses, goes for 1,000 shillings for one onion. We have inflation around leaf vegetables. We have inflation on basically the basic things that we eat day in, day out. And of course, the fuel that fires that is kerosene. And this is a recent development. We also had, of course, before that, the fuel prices going up. So we want to delve more into this discussion. I would like to start with you, my comrade and brother, Moses. Many analysts say that, this may not actually be real inflation because Uganda is arable anyway. But there's an aspect of greedflation where the fact that prices increase for us who buy and for the market, the last mile people are buying very expensively, but then the prices are not increasing for the farmers who sell. So this middleman issue in Uganda, how do we go about it? To avoid some of these fluctuations throughout the year.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sam. Sam, in 2008, there was a world global recession.
Yes.
And you may recall the banking sector in USA almost collapsed.
Yes.
If it were not for President Obama's administration that introduced the TAP intervention that was meant to recapitalize these banks. Of course, this came at the backdrop of very serious public animosity. People felt that why should the government come in handy to rescue these very big economic players, more so those in the financial sector? Because you know that banks rely largely on deposit. So, but also in the same time, many companies were closing in the USA. I'll give you an example of Clarks. Most of us have wore a shoe called Clarks. There was an audit firm that was procured by the Obama administration to evaluate what had caused economic recession in the USA.
That was BlackRock?
No. It was actually PwC.
PwC.
It was PwC. PwC said that most of these American companies were making durable products. Products like Clarks. Clarks would make shoes that would last 10 years. If someone is buying a shoe that lasts 10 years, when are they going to come back again to procure another shoe? So gradually, the company was not making as much profit as it should have been. So when the Chinese company took over Clarks, today, a Clarks shoe cannot take you more than 3 years, even 2 years. In 2 years, the shoe has expired, it is worn out, and you're forced to procure again. So the point here is that at times, demand and supply, actually largely in liberal economies like Uganda, demand and supply play a huge role on how much profit the private sectors are going to make and how much losses they are going to make therein. But also, the state and the government has an overarching responsibility because you know that the state, through central bank, can either enforce fiscal policy or monetary policy. Fiscal is basically around the lending rate that Bank of Uganda sets. Like now, central bank here in Uganda has reduced the lending, actually has increased the lending interest rate to, I think, close to 12%. Why? Because the central bank wants to discourage commercial banks from lending money and therefore withdrawing money in circulation. But also there are other policies like the tax regime that directly influence how the economy plays out. And on tax, I will speak because the tax affects the private sector so much. Sam, show me an economy that has grown without a private sector. If you have a dysfunctional private sector, forget about the economy growing. The private sector must be able to function. The government must be intentional in supporting the private sector through access to soft credit, through a favorable tax regime, through policies that encourage them to do business. But I think as it stands today, our government has taken an outward-looking economic policy. We attempt to attract foreign direct investors at the expense of the local players here. And that is not sustainable. The foreign investors are expatriates. They'll come here, make the money, and repatriate that profit back to their country.
Yes.
They largely, they rarely reinvest back into the country.
True.
So it means that we cannot rely on them to grow our economy. we must rely on the indigenous businessman, on the indigenous Ugandan here who is struggling to put up a business. How can government support them so that the business can grow? We are speaking about, of course, the structure adjustment programs cannot be left out of this conversation because these policies that came in the 1980s that many African countries by effect of bandwagon jumped onto, I think were some of the wrong economic decisions that we took at the time.
Yes.
Because we encouraged privatization, we encouraged government to, we encouraged denationalization of certain government entities. That government should not be a monopoly in certain sectors. But I think areas like health, government should have had a strong grip on health, on education. You cannot privatize.
Strategic.
Yes. Strategic areas, you cannot allow the private sector to wield control over them.
Yeah.
So the economy is not something in isolation. There are many factors that we must look at. Look at access to credit. Today, commercial banks lend at 24%. That is impossible. Impossible. Government has tried to put an option in Uganda Development Bank, but the bureaucracy that comes with it. But also there are limitations. Like someone like Hamis Chigundu, take an example, who wants to put up a multi-billion infrastructure, cannot get money from UDB.
Ugandan Bank.
He will be forced to go to Diamond Trust Bank. And then when he fails to pay, then he's up for foreclosure.
True.
You see what is happening to Aya. They're up for foreclosure. All right? So the economy is bad. I cannot even try to defend it. Things are bad. And if you want to know that things are bad, this period when children were going back to school is when you see the gravity of the matter. Parents cannot sleep. Parents are, if in this time, just go to any bank. The lines of deposit are way longer. So yes, the lines of withdraw are way longer than the lines of deposit because people are incurring so much money on tuition and school fees.
Which would not have happened
if government had taken full control of building more public institutions. Where are the likes of Boroboro? Where are the likes of Sir Samuel Baker? Schools that were government in nature and were offering education at an affordable rate. But today, access to education is a real commodity. So if you have people who are spending so much money in social services or in public goods like education, healthcare, will they have money to invest in businesses? They will not have that money. So when people cannot invest in businesses, you have a defunct private sector. Government cannot collect taxes because there is no one to tax. People cannot save. Then meaning they don't want to retire because they have no savings. It is a whole ripple effect.
Thank you very much, Comrade, for that insightful discussion. I would like to take that discussion to you, still about the economy. Of course, Moses has talked about the structure adjustment policies, which aimed at liberalization of the economy. Moses has tried to hint that while that is not necessarily bad, but some things strategic cannot be left to the people. So do you think Uganda's economy is overtly liberal? Because, for example, there was a discussion, an article yesterday in the Monitor that most of the onions, which all of us use every day, come from Mbale. So when the seasons fluctuate, unfortunately, we still use seasons. When the seasons fluctuate, they have the power to hold and change prices according to their will. So do you think that in that regard, and with the prominence of middlemen, is that an over-liberalization of the economy, which is also negative?
No, running a national economy is not like running a family economy. Running a national economy requires the views and opinions of all stakeholders. And I want to submit unto you that there is no country on the face of this earth that has a liberal economy. All countries, he has been mentioning about the 2008 economic recession in America, across the world. In Obama's book known as The Promised Land, which is a memoir of his 2 tenures in power. He'll tell you that one of the things that we did, we had to reconsider the intentions and aspirations of the local men. Because the American economy was largely dominated by the middle class, and now these people who are planning to join the middle class were being frustrated. And that is a government that works for the people, that is completely democratic. When you come to urban republics like Uganda, if you read the book of William Pike, known as The Combatants, he tells you that when President Museveni came to power, he was asked, how long shall it take you to combat issues that are impeding economic growth like corruption? And William Pike recalls and says that he told him, it won't even take us 2 years. If you read his book, he tells him that one we shall do it through educative and punitive measures. The political will of a government to ensure that people are living a good life is the most important issue in growing an economy. Comrade Kidega has been saying that you cannot grow an economy without the private sector. I want to remind him that a private sector cannot thrive unless the public sector is well functioning. Public sector is...
That's what I said.
No, I'm just backing up. I don't know why you're feeling paranoid that I'm attacking you, but I'm only supporting your point. The private sector hinges greatly on the public sector. Public sector, as long as the mode of recruitment, the modus operandi of the public sector is malfunctional or dysfunctional, we can never have a thriving
private sector.
Because private sector relies on public sector. You understand?
For what? For policies?
For policies, for sustenance.
Even doing business.
Even doing business.
By the way,
yeah.
just to back that, you know, for the longest time, Uganda government is the biggest spender in our economy.
Yeah.
For banks, for almost all services. Yeah.
So when you talk about liberalization of the economy, I think our government lacks, and it is overt, it lacks political will. I want to assure you, most of the policies and most of the programs that are introduced by the government are good. Actually, they're effective because our country, you cannot convince me, is deficient of economists. We have one here. You understand? People who have went and studied things, even abroad, they have the technical know-how. But the issue is, as long as you're having a malfunction and completely dysfunctional public sector, where people that are serving in these government parastatals are not serving based on competence and meritocracy.
But Comrade Jeff, what is the strategic interest in keeping middlemen? Of course, in the previous, in the construction of Uganda as a nation, the idea was to use cooperatives, which is a balance between what?
Oh, the consumers and the producers.
Yes. And we see that in Rwanda still. There's a lot of... But what is the strategic interest in keeping middlemen? Because that is the problem we are discussing.
Unregulated middlemen, I was coming to your point. As long as middlemen are not regulated, through issues like, we had cooperatives here, you understand? They were stifled and they were killed. As long as you don't regulate the middlemen that are passing on, that should be the link between the consumers and the producers. You will have producers that are paying a lot for something small, and you will have producers who are the farmers that are having less for what they have produced. So it all goes back to public. We shall discuss technicalities. We are not the best economists here, you understand? But as long as the government is not paying attention to what the people are saying on ground, paying attention to understanding that we should organize our people in cooperatives, the government should intervene under certain circumstances, you understand, to have a mixed economy. These middlemen are going to exploit both ends. And it's a very strategic goal. It's a strategic point or method used. That you sell to this one at a high price, get the money, pay this one less, become rich. But what is the intention? The intention is having the common man getting something at a reasonable price and having the farmer at the end of the day benefiting. Yeah, so that's my submission. Otherwise, discussions surrounding technicalities, we have technicalities, we have strategies. But the question is, as long as we do not have the intention to balance between the benefit of the common man and the profitation of the businessmen, you understand? Then we are going to let our country wallow in fluctuations, unending economic crisis, and so forth.
Thank you very much for your submissions. I saw Comrade Laban shaking his head. I hope you are not laughing at our economics as lawyers.
Of course, at times.
That's why I said we have economists here.
But we would like to now hear your opinion, especially on the recent inflation around household goods. Especially, household goods, vegetables,
By the way, maybe you only consider the inflation on the day-to-day house goods.
Yeah, because it's a recent,
but
the most
everything,
recent.
by the way, it has. If you have gone, even fuel has gone.
Yes, fuel
so
moved
many
up
things.
Earlier than.
So many things. Maybe some of them you don't buy them. Even the imported goods have increased the prices. But maybe, I am very sure for you, you go home, you want nakati, and the food, right? There are things you don't go to buy. But me, who is interested in knowing various prices every day for different goods, I can assure you that most of the goods, but by the way, even the imported ones. Do you know that we are importing onions currently?
From Tanzania? Yes.
So, before I say anything in regards to your communication,
yes,
as I said prior, that I always follow. I always, before I make conclusion, basing on the
history,
the present situation, I always first go back to the history, because you see, to make conclusions in regards to political and economic, you have to look at the history. At independence and throughout 1960s, Uganda's economy was thriving, it was resilient, vigorous, and if I can say, Uganda's economy by then was one of the promising economies in Sub-Saharan Africa.
That is 1960s.
Yes, throughout the independence, at independence and throughout the 60s. Then, when Amin came in and overthrew the government, then, remember by then, even when the Uganda's economy was resilient, remember it was mostly in the hands of the foreigners. Foreigners. So when he overthrew the government, he took uninformed decisions because he was unlearned. Took uninformed decisions. That's when we saw Uganda's economy at its knees. Uganda started running a deficit budget. There was scarcity of foreign exchange. There was scarcity of food. People were always up and down. There was no concentration of what? Of production and farming. Remember in 1960, 90% of Uganda's export was from agriculture.
Yes.
There was so much export promotion.
Up to date.
So
I am saying 90% by then. 90%. In 1970s, when Amin came into power, Uganda had more than 182 commercial banks operating in different branches of commercial banks operating in different countries, parts of the country. Those branches of commercial bank were to support farmers in terms of production by giving them access to capital, cheap capital. But when by 1987, when the young boys from the bush came in, Uganda by then had almost not less than 82 branches in the country. We also recall that when the NRA took power, Uganda's economy also was at its knees. So this is the steps that Museveni and his young boys by then Two, they had to go import experienced economists from different countries in Tanzania and everywhere. Remember, in local government and everywhere. People who came, they were from outside. Because majority of them were ignorant. Some of them had not gone to school.
But
some of them, even those who had gone to school, they lacked experience in terms of public management. So they had to import people who understood from different countries to come to make sure that they make the economy stable. And that is how the economy started coming up with its growth of 2% by the annually. Then we saw now in 90s, early 90s, he's talking about this structural adjustment program that came in.
Those were in the 80s, not 90s.
No, late 80s to 90s. Yes, it was late 80s.
Early 90s.
Yes, that is it. It was that. So, when they came in, we saw that required the economy, the bigger portion of the economy to go private. That is a privatization. Liberalization means that you are leaving the economy in the hands of the people. That is to say, the prices to be determined by forces of demand and supply.
To a larger extent.
Yes. I do agree with him that entirely there is no economy 100% which is
liberal.
But Uganda's economy, 90% it is liberalized. So this is where we saw now foreign direct investment coming in. Through banking sector, everything. We saw the health sector being liberalized also. The education sector, each and everything. Then this is why we go to the World Bank coming in. And we saw. Whereas we disagree with the Kidega disagrees with the introduction of sexual, but also there should be something, because everything that has a positive impact also it has what? A negative impact. Leaving history aside, I remember sometimes I was here when we were discussing the issue, the impact of the enacting the anti-homosexuality. And I recall I quoted that expect prices of different goods to be high in the next few months, because I knew what I was talking about. One, when you see most of imports going high, most of the imported inflation coming in, the reason may be the scarcity of the dollar. Now there is scarcity of the dollar in Uganda, if you didn't. And it is connected to this. One, most of the dollars that have been coming into the country have been passing through what? The World Bank. The dollar. Because the donations in Uganda come through what? The dollar. They have been passing through the World Bank. The World Bank, in August, I think it was July, August there, took a decision to review its portfolio in regards to financing Uganda's different projects for this. And that was for the project that they were intending to extend, not for the project which are under. So that means that that has created the scarcity of the dollar. And also the exchange rate. That means that Uganda's shillings has depreciated in regards to the dollar. So, because we look at the World Bank holding its funding to Uganda, scarcity of dollar has created, because we need the dollar. We need the dollar to import. We need the dollar to import goods. Because when you are going to Dubai, when you are going to USA, UK, you don't take Uganda's money. You need to exchange with the dollar. You need a dollar. But if it is cash, that means you expect inflation to go. But also you have to look at it's not only the dollar, or that some of the factors that lead to inflation, at times it can be global factors. You cannot undermine the Russia and Ukraine war that has Ukraine. But also the political factors within the country. So most of the people, and it is going to be worse. It is going to be worse. So this is
just the beginning.
It's just the beginning.
Okay.
Then we should pray, because one, it is going to be backed by unemployment very soon. Do you agree? Because let me tell you, most of the projects which the World Bank was going to finance, it is backed by most of the people are employed in those projects. Those projects pay Ugandans a lot of money. They are not going to be employed in the next few months. They are going to be laid off for those projects. Are they going to pay the taxes? Because you can imagine most of the people there in those projects. Someone who may find he earns 15 million in a project monthly. You know how much pay he pays? How much NSSF pays? Pay only. Those projects, you find they are paying VAT. As I conclude, I do agree with this one when he says, and Kidega, that the public sector cannot adequately function without the well-functioning of the public sector.
Yes.
I do agree, because the public sector gives the private sector a lot of business. If you have been reading on the URA, by the way, now it is going to be very difficult for private sector to have government work job, business. If you are not passing through the URA portal, because that is where the VAT is going to be coming from. You have to request through the URA. Then you do everything, procurement and disposal, everything direct to URA, so that they can deduct. So I concluding, I should say that one, most of the inflation you are seeing, it is the global issue, which is out of hands from Uganda. Another thing, it is expenditure, reckless expenditure by Uganda government. 3, the scarcity of the dollar in the country.
Yes.
On a lighter note, though, I'd like to bring to attention a certain comic tweet which a person made in response to the recent declaration that Uganda, in joint efforts with the East African countries, Kenya and Tanzania, they are going to host the AFCON. A tweet came out and said that after Mama Samia Suluhu coming out and declaring that 2 stadiums are going to be constructed in order to accommodate that tournament. And he said that Tanzania was not affected by COVID-19 and was not affected by the Russia-Ukraine war. That's why they're building the 2 stadiums. Uganda, we are very badly hurt by...
By the way, comrade, thanks for that extensive, historical, comparative, and transcendent discourse.
Senior economist.
Yes, Comrade Moses. Uganda's economy. I remember it was Charles Onyango. It's interesting that he's featuring in both segments. But Uganda's economy generally has been resilient. Our money is 3,700 averagely. In any other country, that would be a scandal. But here we live normally with it. We don't have, a lot of those issues. So Onyango asked, Uganda faces a lot of shocks, but somehow continues, like the people continue thriving. And one of the economists, senior economist, was like, it's simply because of the highly fertile, well-distributed arable land. So Ugandans have a lot of asset value per capita. And that has been hitherto up to now. So this issue around productivity, we have now issues like urban migration, rural-urban migration, climate change, all these problems. How can we make sure Uganda doesn't lose this particular strength, where food comes from the garden straight to the market, without the Ukraine war, the dollar, the what? How can we increase the productivity of our citizens to protect that unique strength?
Yeah, one of Africa's greatest writers, Chinua Achebe, said that, and this became an African adage, where he said that he wonders the pot from which Africans drink from their patience and their resilience towards so many issues. So I agree with you. Ugandans have demonstrated a high level of resilience, more so in the COVID-19 era, but also even post that as well. Ugandans remain very resilient people, and I think that is where we say credit to them. Sam, again, you see, economics, I am not an economist, but at least I have read economic literature. And one of them is by Dambisa Moyo. Dambisa Moyo has now ever since become a member of the UK House of Lords. Yes. Yeah. But her background is actually economics. She was trained by the Zambian School of Economics, but also Oxford and all those things. In her book, Dead Aid, she makes a fundamental argument that I think caught my attention. She says that what would happen to African countries if, one, the IMF and World Bank stopped issuing loans, all right? But also she did evaluate the impact of loans, grants, and donations that we get with open arms from those modern and powerful economies. And she said that, think about it, the mosquito net that we get from US aid that comes here for free has put a local mosquito net maker here in Uganda out of business, because they're coming in for free and we are not paying for them. Therefore, the supply is available. So now that local manufacturer of mosquito nets, where is he going to sell his product? That is one. Two, is that aid and donations, as they come usually with limited conditions attached to them, because you know that we have been forgiven of our debt before. So aid comes in a very fluid manner. That makes government, first of all, worth fighting for, and that is why, partly why you see Africa witnessing so many military coups here and there, because governments have become a business. You have all these loans coming in from World Bank, IMF, that is just there to be used with limited accountability. So that makes two things. It makes governments hard to govern, but two, it makes the economy susceptible to inflation, because there is so much money there's so much money for government to spend. That is why African governments are very corrupt. Because if you have all this money that you don't have to account for to anyone, why wouldn't you misuse it? Why wouldn't you buy all these expensive vehicles? True. But also the issue of corruption, Sam, I would not be comfortable if I left this show without speaking about corruption. And it has become, corruption in this country has become institutionalized, like it's on a grand scale. And it's so bad. And in the words of Justice Katutsi, when he was hearing the Gavi case in 2007, he said that, I am tired of trying the small fish. I have to try the big fish now. You see, and that indicates to you how corruption in this country has become a grand norm. It is accepted, we live with it, and so much public expenditure, so much, and Kato did mention it, that the government's appetite to spend money is so high. We spend, our cost of public administration, Jesus Christ, is unbearable. Trips. It is breaking the back of the taxpayer. The money we spend on RDCs, on ministers, is breaking the back. Yes, travel board. It's breaking the back of the taxpayer. True. A taxpayer who, like he said, is unemployed. A taxpayer, you recall, Bank of Uganda told us that less than 1 million Ugandans earn above 1 million Uganda shillings. That is the actual reality. So where is that taxpayer going to get money to finance a very expensive administration? The money is just not there. All right? So Do we have the will to deal with issues like corruption? I don't think so. I think we have failed as a country. But we must get to the drawing board and address the issue of corruption. Sam, as I respond to your question, because I believe I have, but not directly.
Yeah.
The question that you put to me was whether...
no, the issue around the question of productivity.
Productivity, yes.
Especially among
agriculture.
Yes,
arable land and etc.
Yes.
Sam, we have the most arable land, like you mentioned, Africa as a continent. But in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, we found ourselves lacking food. And the failure, the interruption of the global supply chain had an effect on us as a country, on food supplies. So I asked myself, where is the mismatch? Where is the disparity? We have all this arable land. We boast of being an agricultural country. But when a shock like that of Russia-Ukraine happens, then somehow we are being affected. So that demonstrates to you that we are producing for subsistence. We are producing the quality of our agricultural products. The standard cannot meet a global competition. That yes, you have coffee, you have cotton, etc., but you're producing seeds. We export seeds, right, of coffee. So there is need for us to modernize agriculture.
Okay.
There is need for us to be able to, government should come in to incentivize in terms of fertilizers. My mother is a maize grower. 3 weeks ago, she asked me to procure for her fertilizers for her garden. These things are so expensive. Government needs to come in handy and offer incentives on things like fertilizers. All right? Things
but
like...
They are not taxed, you know that.
Yeah, but they remain very expensive. Why? Because
they are important.
Because of their value.
They are important.
But on some of these things, government has an overarching responsibility. That how can you support the farmer? Through having access to quality seedlings, access to affordable fertilizers, or in fact at times you can give them for free, you know. And that is, I mean, modernize agriculture, you know, attract and all these things. Short of these things, the African Continental Free Trade Area will be music to our ears, but we won't benefit from it. Because even at that stage, you must export things that are of standard.
Yes, thank you very much.
I wanted to add on him, on his submission. One, Mr. Moderator, looking at of course, I did say that the inflation is not only controlled by the global supply chain, but also, as I said, as the dollar. But adding on Kidega's issue, we can talk but a lot here, but we shall talk about the expenditure, the corruption, each and everything. But this is also a time that we, the young people, have to come up. We increase our effort to make sure that we conserve our environment. Issues of climate change are very, 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 very
actually,
serious.
that is the point I was.
Yes, issues of climate change is very, very important. Very, very important. Climate change. So many our forest covers are being destroyed that support farming processes. So issues of climate change are very issue, but not only looking at how can we increase climate financing. This is a very big issue, by the way, that we the youth, I'm glad is here, the Secretary for Labor Affairs. How do we make sure that for climate financing, if the money for climate financing is appropriated by the Parliament,
What's up?
how are we making sure that they go to the download to make sure that climate financing is stable? So the issues, I want to stand with the people of my constituency in Isingiro South who have faced issues related to climate, of Muizi sub-county. They have been facing a lot of issues. Their plantation is down because of we are not so much concerned with climate issue. So apart from his discussion, I feel like climate issue is a very, very serious issue.
Thank you very much. Comrade, you have the honor of closing this discussion. So I'll request for a few solutions. Many problems have been stated. One of them being, of course, the aid problem on the side of the government. But this discussion also goes back to, we have already said, for example, that Uganda has a high capacity to produce, but we need to protect that ability of as many Ugandans as possible to stop. Now, one of the issues, halting that, some of them have been stated. The very last and important one being, of course, climate change.
Mm-hmm.
The climate is changing. Comrade Moses talked about the Ukraine war. Actually, the effect of the Ukraine war is that they are the key supplier of fertilizers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some of the fertilizers increased by up to 90%. There's the issue of rural-urban migration. The education of the young generation, but not vocational education. So those who end up in the city doing nothing, how can we get back to a highly vocational and productive society, but also one which doesn't destroy, because there's also that aspect of destroying our land using this fertilizer, one which is sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
Sustainable, vocational and productive society. So what are some of the steps we can take as we conclude this discourse?
Thank you so much. It has actually been an honor to sit on a panel with these two very brilliant gentlemen.
Yeah.
Just like he has said, I will quote a book by John Smith. It is known as The Wealth of Nations. I extracted a point which
that is the book, not a book.
The book.
Yeah.
The book. I extracted a point which is to the effect that I love calling the general specialization policy.
Yes.
In handling the wealth of the country. This is where you sit down and extract and identify where does our country have strength. You understand? Because a friend to all is a friend to none. And in growing a country, you need to identify that our country is strong here, here, and here. How can we ensure that we have our stronghold intact to act as the fallback position? That's why when countries like countries in the Middle East realized that their strength was oil, natural resources, they put their strength there. These other things of specializing, they focus there, but they much focus here. Though these days there are so much focus on specialization. So as a country, Uganda, from time immemorial, we had agriculture. When Churchill Winston came here in 1963, on his tour in Africa, he looked at Uganda among all African countries and he said, this is the pearl of Africa. And Uganda has been always the breadbasket of Africa. If it is well cultivated, Uganda has the potential to feed the entire of Africa. You understand? So, in order to improve on our situation and also ensure that we caution Ugandans against such, I would say, unforeseeable circumstances, we have to ensure that we do what we call the general specialization. Identify we are doing agriculture, number one. Number two, how can we have to go back to the education system.
True.
Education system is very important. We have to ensure that we entice young people into agriculture. That's very important. Because we have arable land, fertile land, but as long as we don't have the young workforce being interested in agriculture, but we shall not have the productivity that we want. So the government should focus there. Then number two, I think and I still believe in cooperatives. Cooperatives being a very important tool in ensuring that, number one, not just about bargaining power, but the cooperatives ensure that farmers stay in one accord. You understand? Disorganized production does not drive a country to prosperity. So the government should ensure that it intervenes in reviving these cooperatives, strategic cooperatives. That as a country, this is our strength. After identifying our strength and generally specializing, you have to come in with now boosting and building cooperatives that are sustainable. You understand? Number one, to help in the bargaining of the prices. And number two, to ensure that these farmers stay in one accord. And number three, to entice young people. Because young people feel that farming is not profitable. And true it is. Farming, if you do farming, you may incur a lot of losses because of uncertainty. So that's what I believe. But as I've been always saying, that without political will, a government cannot implement even the best of ideas.
Yeah.
Understand? So our government is infested with corruption.
Recently,
the Speaker of Parliament, when the Honorable Semuju stood up to raise a point, he was again speaking about the issue of iron sheets. And surprisingly, though it went unnoticed, the Speaker of Parliament asked Semuju a very funny question. You are speaking about iron sheets as if it's the first thing that has been stolen in Uganda. In simple terms, they have been stealing things in Uganda. Why is your interest in iron sheets? So such an understanding needs to be broken down in our country. As I conclude, therefore, I want to give hope to Ugandans, especially young Ugandans out there who are experiencing unemployment, which seems to be reversible, that we still have hope. You know, there is nothing that is as dangerous as a hopeless country. So we are in the evening of this crisis, we are in the evening of this catastrophe. We need to work together. We have the potential to make our country better. Don't lose hope in our country. We still have hope to make our country better, fully functional, and serving the interest of the common man. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Jeff, Waako, and we hope to see you more often here. Of course,
but we didn't say our concluding remarks. You want to?
but Laban, you never conclude. Unfortunately, our time is up. And our discussions will always proceed. Comrade Kato Laban, thanks for your insights. And of course, for that, a lot of history. I believe you concluded somewhere in between there. And we always appreciate you for coming. And of course, Comrade Moses Kidega, who is ever present to throw light on some of these
Maybe, Mr. Just 1 minute. It's just to call upon the young people.
Yes.
To come on 13th, to come and participate in the Youth Business Forum on 13th at Koro, which is organized by the Parliamentary Youth Forum on Youth Affairs, and also in conjunction with partners like the National Youth Council. Come and participate and see where innovation, entrepreneurship, and the collaborations collide, because I believe we can shape the future of businesses.
Thank you very much. Sure. Thank you very much for that announcement. I'm hoping Comrade Moses won't kill me for segregating. But that brings us to an end of this particular segment. Has been really insightful. We encourage you to share this content as much as possible. Subscribe and make sure it reaches as many people as possible. Most importantly, keep these discussions going within your circles as we look forward to a collective future that works for each and every one of us Ugandans. Thank you. It was a pleasure hosting you. I remain Okot Olaa.